Look, had to get on my grind, ain't got no time to be making excuses. Success in my mind, I hit up Sean when I landed up in Houston. Him and Gentry told me, Ayo, G, when you chasing your dreams, gotta take that risk, so I stake my chips, put it all on me. It is what it is, put all the chips all on me, yeah. I don't talk too much, put the money up all on me, yeah. I'ma put 10 bands, 100 bands, millions all on me, yeah. I'ma put 10 bands, 100 bands, millions.
Okay, so today we have a very, very interesting guest. Her name is Nathalie Niddam. Did I say that right?
You said it perfectly.
She is from Canada. She flew here from Florida, but she is a longevity biohacker and peptide expert. So Sean recently interviewed a peptide expert, but I was not around for that one. So I'm super excited to have you here today to tell us more and get more in depth than he was able to do in the time given. Mm-hmm. So the way they did his was, A to Z, mention all the main peptides and what they do. But Sean has a few that he really wants to pick your brain on and go into depth more than we were able to on the last one.
For sure.
So again, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Tell our guests who you are and what you do today, and then we'll rewind back and quickly tell your story of how you got there, because I know they really, really want to hear a lot of more details than we were able to give in the past.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much to both of you for having me. This has been a great 24 hours, really fun.
Awesome.
So today I host a podcast myself called Longevity with Nathalie Niddam. And I manage, a large Facebook community, a private membership community. I'm starting to get into that world of, wow, I've got all this stuff in my head. It's time to start thinking about writing a book about this stuff. I really got into peptides a few years ago. Like everybody else who comes across them, they're captivating as compounds that can trigger the body's own ability to heal itself. And I think this is where peptides and even bioregulators are so fascinating to people and where they really stand away from drugs. So in terms of how I got here, and we'll go back to that in a bit, but in terms of how I got here, it's been an interesting journey, as it is for so many people. Like I started off always fascinated with science. So I studied physiology when I was in university, and then I studied physiology. I was a fitness instructor. I kind of started off as a lifeguard, then I was a fitness instructor. And then I ended up in Toronto, and I somehow fell into sales.
It's just insurance? Is that what it was?
I'm not going to take you through the whole journey here because people will be bored. Although my first job, which very few people know this, my very first job in Toronto was in a little store called Helium Highs, where I was
interesting.
I was blowing up balloons.
Okay. I was about to say, what is it, like people sucking helium in here to get high?
I was like, I still have PTSD from like blowing up these balloons that were coated in this goo. And when you would blow it up too much, it would explode and you'd like,
oh my God.
It was
PTSD.
Like right out of a cartoon. It was horrible.
I could never have that job. I'm severely afraid of toasters and biscuits. I don't like anything that pops or jumps.
Oh yeah, you would not have lasted in this job. Anywho, be that as it may, somehow I ended up in advertising and advertising sales. So I ended up like in this kind of sales career most of my adult life. But I was always a fitness instructor, so I always kind of kept a hand in a different space. And then about, I want to say 15 years ago now, I woke up one morning and said, I don't want to do that anymore. I always missed health and science, and I always had this belief that the body has this amazing ability to heal itself. And you can see how so much of what we're doing in modern medicine it works to a degree, but it really doesn't serve people to get better. And then the other piece of that is you can see in your family the things that start to happen, right? So my grandmother developed dementia. She developed type 2 diabetes. Like there was all this stuff coming down the pipes and started asking.
I call that type 3 now? Is it all these sugars?
In the dementia, well, exactly. The dementia happened after the type 2 diabetes had really set in. So now you become insulin resistant in your brain. It's one of the mechanisms of action. So I went back to school.
I think it's good to hear that too, that I don't know how old you were. I'm assuming probably around your 40s.
Yeah.
That it's never too late.
No.
It's kind of what this podcast is about, is inspiring people to follow their dreams. And you knew that what you were doing wasn't fulfilling to you. So going back to school and like helping people. That's what you do. You help people now.
100%.
You're a teacher.
And it was going back to my roots, right? And going back to my first love. And it is, we are living longer and better. If you go back a few generations, by 60, 65, people were old. They felt old. They acted old. Their expectations of how long they were going to live and what they look like, feel like, move like was completely different than it is today.
I always say that.
Yep.
My grandparents, I watched them retire at 65, and then they sat on the couch and they never really left the house. I mean, watch TV, maybe read a little bit, maybe go in the garden for a little while. That was like the first maybe couple years. But then, of course, just slowly started deteriorating over time. Never got out of the house. And every year I would go over there, you know, every holiday pretty much, they just look a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And then my grandmother at the end actually ended up getting some type of dementia. I don't remember exactly what it was, but she didn't really recognize anybody anymore and couldn't really hold a conversation. But she ended up passing away. And then my grandpa ended up a year later maybe passing away. And then on the other hand, I have my other partner, 65, and he's in really good shape. And he feels like it's, you know, just starting his life. It's like, you know, where
Staying
he's
active. Yeah.
And it's just how you take care of yourself. And people don't understand that you don't have to live that way anymore. I think it was maybe like an old school way of thought. It's like, okay, I'm on the downward slope of my life, and they just don't know how good they can feel, especially in your, you know, 40s or so, even 50s, 60s, and now 70s, 80s. And so I think when people talk about longevity, people automatically assume like, oh, live to be 150. Well, not really. I don't think that's what everybody's saying. It's like the quality of life all the way to the end of life, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's about health span, right? We've kind of solved for lifespan. We can keep people alive a really long time, or science can keep people alive a really long time. The question is, are you living a life worth living? Are you living the life that you want to live? And that's where having a shift in mindset which is the first thing.
Yes.
Right? Your 60-year-old today or your 50-year-old today has a very different outlook mindset than they would have 20 or 30 years ago for the most case. And because we know we have a longer runway, it's why we feel confident to like reinvent ourselves, start a new career, say, you know what, I spent my whole life doing this. This is what I really want to do. This is my passion. So I'm going to go back to it. And the truth of the matter is going back to school makes your brain hurt, but it keeps you young. So
I can only imagine trying to do any kind of math these days.
But having that foundation from university days really helped me out. I remember sitting in biochemistry class or biology class or chemistry class or learning about valence electrons and looking around the room at people who'd never done a science course before. And they had this look of absolute panic on their faces. And I was like, oh yeah, been there, done that. I got that. So anyway.
That's why peptides made a little more sense to me, because even though I had to take biology 3 times to pass,
you passed.
I started reading about, you gave me a book or I bought something on Amazon in relation to peptides. He's like, you should read this to better understand. But everything started clicking more. All that stuff that I thought was useless knowledge starts to kind of click back. I'm like, okay, all this makes sense. I know what mitochondria is, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I want to talk to you about. You know, one thing we talked about last night was gut biome, how, you know, the health of your gut really determines the health of your entire body. I think that's important to know. We talked a little bit about osteoporosis and women and weightlifting. Kind of the same thing that my
Gentry's so excited about her upcoming program.
So I think we could start this in so many different ways. But I do want to talk about that because I learned something new from you last night. I didn't know how important weightlifting was. I thought my 2 days of Pilates was, you know, getting me somewhere in life, but you talked about the importance of someone, you know, my age really making that a priority. So I wasn't in a wheelchair by the time I'm 70 or 80 because my bones are all breaking. So let's start with kind of talking about that, and then I'll give the mic to Sean. Maybe we'll just rotate asking questions because we both have so many things that we want to go over today.
And ping pong today. Yeah. So on the osteoporosis, and you know, I think there's a bunch of myths about osteoporosis, but one of them is that it only affects women. So the first thing I want to say is it also can affect men. And it has to do, definitely in women, it's 100% linked to menopause in terms of the acceleration of the process of the bone loss. Definitely hits when we lose our hormones. But the truth is, and you know, as the youngest listeners of this podcast need to know this, it's you build bone your entire life. So if you're listening to this and you're 25 or you're 30 or you're 35, don't sit there and say, oh, I'm not even close. I'm too far away. That's when you're building the inventory. Think of it as stockpiling the bone so that when your change happens, whenever those hormones start to drop and there's a natural loss of bone that starts to happen, you're starting with a bigger bank account.
I think it's also about creating habits early too, because
100%.
Sean, I don't know if your parents, where you got this working out thing from. I know it helped with your anxiety and that's kind of why you started, but I did not have parents to look up to for eating habits. We've talked about this before, or working out. So I never made it a habit until I met you. And it was still years after that that I made it somewhat of a habit.
I didn't either. My parents didn't. Same thing. They probably never exercised a day in their life before.
Well, how did you get into it? Was it one of your friends? Or at
No,
school,
so
or?
I was 130 pounds when I was and like a very, very young looking high school student. And so I wanted to get bigger. I was, one of the skinniest kids. And so of course, when you're 17, you just want to go like work out and be
Took
jacked
some of that
and
weight gainer
ripped.
2000?
Yeah, I did. Joe Weider's weight
I
gainer.
remember
Whatever
all the
it
guys in
takes.
high school.
Joe Weider's weight gainer, like the old school stuff in the bucket, actually really worked because of course, when you're younger, you're not eating how you should. It's probably why you don't gain weight. But once I started taking enough protein in, I started gaining weight and I got really into it. And then my 20s, it did start helping my anxiety a lot. So became a really strong habit of mine, not just for physical reasons, definitely for mainly mental. I think the concern that most women have is I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to gain weight. But that's,
I dare you.
I know it's a myth, but it's a myth, but that's the most concerning thing that all of the women are going to say.
For sure.
Especially if they don't already weight train.
So you don't have to CrossFit is what you're saying. You don't have to CrossFit
No.
to,
No. You know what it is about weightlifting? It's intimidating to someone who's just never wanted to, never done that. It's not to build bone, you need to push really heavy weight. And so I would say to you want a trainer and you literally, like, you can do this in half an hour twice a week. You might not even break a sweat. Your heart rate will go up. It will push you. It will be not the most pleasant half hour of your week, but it will stress your bones so that your body knows, oh, this bone is bending. This bone is getting challenged, and therefore I need to build it up.
So I want to clarify. She does not mean lifting 10-pound weights in your Pilates class like I've been doing. She means
This
like
does
bench
not count.
She means bench pressing like a good 180.
This does not count.
Sit and be fit.
Yeah, not sit and be fit. So tell me what you're talking about for, like, what do you do for your weight?
So I
training?
literally work out with a trainer once to twice a week for half an hour, and I will leg press over 200 pounds. I will, and it's shocking, and at the same time,
The two most recent interviews we did, both of the women were in really good shape, but they did heavy weight training, but they were very thin. And so I still think that most women are scared to do it because if you leg press 200 pounds, am I going to gain like 20 pounds on my legs? That doesn't work that way. You're not going to just do a couple workouts and your legs are going to be like bodybuilder looking.
People who are getting bulky like that are taking creatine, they're taking protein, they're really just
Women
doing a lot to grow that.
you just can't.
You can't build that
Hormonally,
much
you
muscle.
can't.
Yes, you can't do it.
You just can't.
The stuff they see on TV, they're taking things to enhance. They're enhance their
taking
muscle.
testosterone.
Women
They're
can't build
juicing.
that much muscle.
Or they're working for it. Like, it's a full-time job. So, but we're going to go back to creatine in a minute because you need to be taking creatine.
I know. So
all of us need to be taking creatine.
the same lady I told you that was her Pilates trainer that
she said the same thing.
told her to start lifting weights. We got to get Gentry to start lift weights. We need to get Gentry to start taking creatine.
Yep. Well, she already told me, and I found some creatine that
Okay.
you must have left or somebody
No,
left at
you
our
can
lake
have it.
house. But listen, today I made progress. I had Instacart come deliver all the things. I have my hemp seed oil shit. I've got chia seeds. I think
get
I'm
rid of your
saying these
seed oil
things
stuff.
right. I've got I don't know how many grams of protein is in a scoop. This is a brand new container. I've got banana. I had 2 scoops of peanut butter. I had coconut milk, and I made me a shake.
Look at you.
while I was getting my hair done.
And how are you feeling?
So I'm feeling good. I haven't eaten yet. I know you said go ahead and have your lunch first, and then I got 2 proteins on my little sushi bowl thing this morning. So I'm really, really trying hard because I'm trying to get away from those pre-mixed drinks that are giving me that Mima breath, like we say, because I'm in people's faces all day. But I have a NutriBullet here, so I'm making a commitment that I'm trying to get my protein. Not only for the GLP-1 that I'm on, it's a requirement, or my hair starts falling out. It's even more important because I want to make what I'm doing worth it, and I want to be able to see more results.
Perfect. The other thing, and maybe this will segue us into our next topic, is by doing the heavy weightlifting, by building the muscle mass, you're now building your metabolic flexibility in your body, right? So if you have more muscle, think of it as there's more warehouses to store the glycogen, the glucose. You become more insulin sensitive. And so it's insurance for maintaining a healthy body composition, which doesn't require you to be necessarily as regiment. Well, you're still going to have to watch what you eat, but you're always going to want to eat a good quality diet, but you become you get more resilient in your ability to store energy.
You'll burn fat and build more muscle. Like you'll burn more fat.
Burn fat
the more
while you're
muscle
sitting.
you have. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you're taking a GLP-1, what a lot of people don't realize and their doctors are not telling them, and I'm hearing this over and over when people are withering away as they're coming in and I see them once every few months, I'm like, what are you taking? Are you on trizepatide? Are you on semaglutide? But they're also complaining about their hair falling out.
Yeah.
And a lot of them do not know the importance of what happens when you're not taking your body weight in grams of protein. That needs to be at minimum equal to
1 gram per. And here's the thing. If you're using a GLP-1 agonist, so we're talking about tirzepatide or semaglutide, and at this stage of the game, I think it's fairly well known that tirzepatide is much better tolerated than semaglutide.
Keep hearing that over and over and over.
It just
Less
seems to
side
have less
effects,
side
too.
effects. It doesn't fatigue you. Like it's a definitely. Sorry,
Superior.
semaglutide. It's just a better product right
keep
now,
hearing
and
over
there's
and over.
others coming down the pipes. But when you're not eating as much, this is where every bite counts. This is where the concept of nutrient density becomes incredibly important. So if you're going to only be consuming 1,200 calories a day, then every one of those, or 1,000 calories a day, then every one of those calories really needs to count towards giving your body what it needs to be healthy. And that's not calories. That's nutrients.
And you said this last night, and I heard someone else say it a couple of days ago. So hearing it twice back to back is starting to rewire my brain. If you have a plate with salad, a potato, and your steak, and you're having a hard time finishing your plate, always go for the protein first.
Steak first. 100%. And if you can't, and a lot of people can't get enough protein in when they're using GLP-1. So if that's the case for you, there's a supplement called EAAs, or essential amino acids. There's a couple of different formulas out there. I mean, I've got we've all got our favorites, but definitely it's a powder you mix in a drink.
Don't you take that?
I don't anymore because I pretty much get everything from my diet, but I used to a long time ago.
What brand do you take?
I use Kion. I use Kion because what they've done is they've enhanced the leucine. So there's what essential amino acids are. These are the 9 amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. There's 9 of these amino acids your body can't produce itself. So you need to get them from your diet. So typically, the easiest way to get them is from animal protein. The reason I like Kion is because it's leucine enhanced, and leucine is the amino acid that really signals the body to build muscle.
So how did you take your amino acids? Did you mix them in with something, or is it a
was
dropper,
just-
or is it a pill?
It was just a powder, and so usually they'll have like a flavored powder, and you can just put it in your water.
Okay, well that's
So,
easy.
Yeah,
You don't have to make a shake or anything.
And almost all of them taste very good nowadays. They're not.
Yeah, I mean Kion.
Well,
I would say
if you have some extra leucine, then it probably might have a little bit
it tastes a
bitter of
little
taste.
sulfur.
Yeah.
They taste kind of funky. The good ones taste funky. I would say the ones you buy. I just bought a more commercial brand for my husband and my son because we were running out of my Kion, and I was like, okay, well, this is mine. You guys can have that, which is really mean. I'm sorry. I'm going to buy more Kion. But I would say that the flavor, that like the store-bought brands are much more heavily flavored. They're using sucralose. They're not using necessarily the best ingredients, flavors. With the Kion, the best flavor, in my humble opinion, is the mango because they've balanced the sweet and the tart enough to offset.
And you drink it with straight water. You don't
Just
mix it with
it
anything
just
else.
has to be cold. I drink it on my way to the gym, and I will drink if I'm working out a lot and I know that I'm not getting my food in. I'm going to do 2 to 3 doses a day.
So this amino acid supplement powder that you're using in your drink,
Yeah.
that helps support you breaking down the
Building
protein
muscle.
and building muscle
It
together.
helps you to build muscle.
It's not a replacement too.
It's not a replacement to eating protein in the sense that you still need to eat your protein because you get lots of other nutrients from protein, right? But in terms of getting those building blocks to repair and build muscle, the essential amino acids and it gives it to your body, so like you don't have to digest it. It's just gets into the bloodstream and gets to work right away.
So my next question is your heart.
What about
Your heart is a muscle.
Yeah.
So when you hear about people not taking in their body weight in protein. Maybe they're only getting half of their protein. Things start withering away. They're not only losing fat, they're losing muscle. Does that mean it's also affecting their heart? Could it damage the heart long term if people really are abusing it and not eating enough?
So that's a great question. And I would say that the body's wisdom is such that the last place it's going to go for protein is the muscle, is the
Friend sent
heart.
me an article and I got a little nervous. I was like, oh God, what am I doing?
No, there's a doctor. I saw a doctor on Instagram recently say this, and I was just sitting there. And I'm not a doctor, guys. So just full disclosure, I went back to school and became a holistic nutritionist, and I did all the things. The body will preserve the things that it needs the most. Skeletal muscle. If you're sitting eating bonbons all day and you're not feeding your muscle, the body's sitting there going, well, we don't need that. But it needs your heart to keep pumping, to keep your brain alive and the rest of you alive. So your body's not going after if your body's going after your heart, you are like in
really bad
severe
place.
starvation, right? So don't worry about your heart. Here's the other thing that people don't talk about GLP-1s enough. One of the mechanisms of action that GLP-1s work through is that they make you more insulin sensitive. So that means first of all, your body responds to glucose coming in by releasing a more appropriate amount of insulin. So it releases insulin from the pancreas. The insulin is the way that the glucose gets stored into the muscle as glycogen, right? If you become more insulin sensitive at skeletal muscle, that means your muscles are storing energy. Ergo, this means that exercise becomes easier. You're now better fueled to exercise. So the truth of the matter is that if you are eating enough protein and you're exercising, it should become easier. Now, look, if somebody's 300 pounds and has not exercised in a lifetime, just getting out of their chair and walking around is going to be beneficial for them. Are they not going to lose any muscle while they lose the extra 100 pounds? Yeah. They will probably lose some muscle.
But just giving them a place to start.
But it gives them a place to, exactly.
You get your heart pumping, you get your heart rate up, everything just, is going to flow better.
100%. 100%. And as they lose weight, they start to feel better and their energy comes up and now they want to exercise more. So it's this beautiful thing that starts to happen that if people are getting the right coaching, and then you've got people who are trying to lose the last 20 or the last 10 pounds, well, in this case, again, we're now in a situation where the energy is stored in the muscle. It should become now easier to exercise. It's about getting into a routine and changing your mindset and building a body that is going to be so much more resilient that you will be able to come off the GLP-1s at the end. Because in the end, you will be carrying more muscle. You will have hopefully adopted better eating habits.
Yeah, an overall better place.
So now you'll be in a place where you can wean yourself off the GLP-1s. Maybe you might need a couple of supplements to help. Who knows? It'll really depend on you and your metabolic flexibility. And then there are a lot of people who will have come off GLP-1s and they might come back they might say, starting to feel a little fluffy. So they might come back and revisit low dose GLP-1s for 2 or 3 months, whatever the case may be, just a little bit fine tuned. And then they come off them again. There's yet another group of people. There's quite a lot of doctors in functional medicine who they'll talk about microdosing GLP-1s for people because they've noticed that they have an anti-inflammatory effect on the body, right?
So low and slow, that's what I do it for, is because, like I was mentioning to you last night, I'm feeling more inflammation, but that could be coming from something else. But over the last 2 or 3 years, like my cankles don't exist anymore. It's always been like an ongoing joke that I've always had very large ankles for my body.
I'm sitting here waiting, cankles. I don't know.
Your calf and your ankle are one.
Right.
But my feet don't swell nearly as much as they used to. That was even before I started hearing a lot about it. 3 years ago, there was just barely any talk about this. And semaglutide made a huge difference in my swelling.
She would get on an airplane and then get off. And
I could feel the water.
Swollen, yeah. And so now she doesn't get any of those side effects anymore from either flying or whatever. And it just never really has all that inflammation.
I mean, just getting my ring on my finger after I had the baby, I couldn't get it on and off my finger.
Yeah, 100%. So, so to go back to the GLP-1s, like what we have to, and we're still, they're still being researched. They're being researched now for Alzheimer's, for neurodegenerative diseases. They're being researched for heart disease because they are helpful for heart disease. They're beneficial for so many different things because they tap into so many different pathways. Like we talked about this last night. One of the ways that they work is they help to shut down the food noise. Yeah. So if you're not
First thing you asked me,
constantly,
which is absolutely, that's why
like
I do
if you're not constantly fighting this little chatterbox going, when are we going to have some
Snack,
chips?
snack.
When are we going to have another snack? I really want something kind of sweet. No, maybe I want something tart. No, wait, we need something crunchy and salty.
Crunchy, the
right?
crunchy and salt.
And so if that noise starts to come down, you don't care as much. Yeah. And now you start to reclaim your life a little bit, because for people who really suffer from food noise, it consumes.
Well, I told Sean when I first started taking it, I was like, I feel like I've lost my only joy in life. It was about a month. It was an overwhelming obsession too.
She also was on semaglutide, which had a ton of side effects. Now she doesn't. Now she
Food didn't
has
taste
both.
good at all.
Yeah, now she has both. Like she loves. We still go out to eat a lot, and she's able to enjoy her food, but also not eat Funyuns all day.
So,
Funyuns.
so
Funyuns have to go.
she doesn't know what Funyuns are. Brian, we're going to introduce her to some Funyuns
It's
today.
one of
We
those,
have some
like-
in the back. She's never heard of
Not
it.
It's like
before.
a
having
fake
Funyuns.
manufactured
No, so
onion
this
ring.
goes
I
back
guess,
Nothing
like
real in
onion
it.
ring or
This
something.
goes back to nutrient density and food quality.
Don't ever let her have a bite. She'll be instantly addicted.
No,
Yeah, think about it. If you eat 2 bags of chips during the day, probably 600, 700 calories, but none of it did
crap.
anything. Like, so
Yeah.
you're, for women out there that don't lift weights and they do that, and then they maybe eat a salad and then 2 bags of chips, you're not going to be like hard and toned and like
No.
nice looking. You're going to be soft. You might be kind of thin, but
Skinny
you're going
fat.
to be, you're going to be
Skinny fat.
really, really
100%.
soft, and you're not going to be as in good of health.
So
Because you're not going to have as much muscle mass. You're not going to burn as much fat, right? You get down to that low weight.
well,
but
no,
you're
then
not-
you come off. The hunger comes galloping back, and you have no muscle
yeah,
to burn it off. So you've completely, so 100% you will have set yourself up for complete disaster. And so, I wish I wish that there'd be more nuance in the communications for people. Like this can be controlled. This this can be done properly. The bad news, the problem is that humanity looks for silver bullets. And the reason for that is because human beings would not be alive today if our bodies didn't always look for the most efficient way to do things. So it's kind of built into our DNA. But in this case, if you don't do the work,
full spectrum. But a lot of doctors, I think, if someone's getting it on insurance, for example, and their regular, doctor MD is giving this to them, keep in mind, if they don't see one person every 10 or 15 minutes, they're going to lose money. They're
100%.
going to break even. One of my friends is dating a doctor, and he was telling us the same thing. He's like, I want to be able to spend more time with my patients, but it's either I make money or I don't make money or I go bankrupt, right?
Yeah.
And so they're not giving the full, like, you have to eat this, you have to exercise, you have to do this, here's the drug, put a Band-Aid on it, and then their health deteriorates after that and their hair falls out.
yeah, well, and the hair falling out is a protein thing. It can be a thyroid thing. It can be a thing that happens because you're just not consuming enough calories. So I used to drink when I was on. I did a run of semaglutide and tirzepatide for a while, and ironically, I was off for almost a year. And about a month and a half ago, I was kind of like, time to dip the toe in again. But I used to drink this stuff I called, what was I calling it? I think I called it my swamp water. And my swamp water had protein, it had greens, it had reds, it only looked like swamp water. It actually tasted pretty good.
I was kind of gagging, thinking another side effect is everything makes you nauseous. I'm like, oh, what is she putting in this thing?
I can see Gentry looking at me going, being more horrified by the
I
second.
love green drinks though. You just put a little bit of
She actually
pineapple or
does,
something
yeah.
sweet. I actually had one this week and everyone was like, what are you drinking? I'm like, it has kale, spinach, it had ginger in it. But yeah, if you just mix creatine or whatever, or even your amino acids,
creatine's
something like that.
creatine you can put in your coffee, right?
That's what mine-
Creatine you can put in anything. So you want to start at 5 grams, and most of us could probably use 10.
You should put it in there and see if I even notice and see if it makes my coffee.
But split it up.
Really?
5
So-
and then 5.
I take 5. What's the difference in 10? Like, what do you think?
I think you just get more benefits. I think that creatine's a little bit like magnesium, right? Everybody thinks
Yeah.
of magnesium as, it's relaxing. Magnesium participates in over 300 different processes in the human body. So you need magnesium not only a little bit, you need it a lot, and you need different forms of magnesium,
I take 2 different kinds right now.
right? So
that
I
why it's
take
good to
one
take it
that's 7 different kinds of magnesium. So
Is that why it's good to take it at night while your body goes into repair? So it has
you can use
that, or-
magnesium at different
anytime?
times a day. But with creatine, your brain needs creatine. Your body needs creatine. Your muscles need creatine. And so, especially as we age, so I'd say over the age of 50, we can start moving towards the 10 to going to 2 to 3 doses a day of creatine.
We had one of the top nutritionists on in Houston, and he said the same thing. I asked him about hey, I've been hearing a lot about brain health, and I was more interested in that. I mean, I took it when I was 20 to try to build muscle, but wasn't interested in it for really muscle. Nowadays, I'm like, I keep hearing about brain health. He's like, you should absolutely take it. And so I started taking it the day after the podcast. I've been taking it since then. It's been about 3 months, maybe 4 months or something.
And I'm interested in this one too. So it's gonna be your question and my question.
Okay.
Because we both want to know.
It does.
Because you are a peptide expert. Is there something else outside of creatine that we should be doing to help like sharpen up memory function and just the spark?
Oh my God.
Brain
There's
sparking.
So much. There's so
Go for
much.
it. Top 2,
And
top 3.
It's not even peptides. I mean, I wouldn't even start with peptides. I would say that there's a couple of supplements that are just really powerful for the brain. And they come from food, but we just can't get enough of them from food. So raw egg yolks, for example, uncooked egg yolks are incredibly nutrient dense for the brain. Well, that's a sunny side up egg.
Okay.
Poached egg.
I can do that.
You can do that. I'm not talking about putting an egg yolk.
Yeah, I know. I'm like,
No, you're good.
thinking of
I mean, you could, and you wouldn't know it's there, but I
you even said
could make
something
you a
interesting.
shake, and you'd never know.
In your specialty
Egg
cocktails.
white.
Oh,
the egg
Which is
white,
not
I
the
can
part
do.
you want. No,
So that you said
the
that at
yolk.
dinner last night. So a lot of people think they're doing the best they can do for themselves by only having the egg white. What are your thoughts on that?
So egg white is the reason they're doing this is because they're going for the protein, right? Now, little known fact is that you only get 9 grams of protein in an egg. So if you're having 2 eggs in the morning, that's 18 grams of protein. That's pretty light on the protein front. So you probably need three eggs to get your 27 grams, and you got to do and that's a big egg. So if you've got itty bitty eggs, then you're getting even less protein.
Does hard boiling it affect anything?
It doesn't. So egg white is better to consume cooked. Egg yolk is better to consume uncooked. And the reason for that, I believe, is that egg white binds to biotin. So it makes things that you need less bioavailable. Now, there's bodybuilders and people out there that are chugging raw eggs constantly. Yeah. The challenge with eggs is they're one of the most allergenic foods. Mm-hmm. And most people are if they're going to have an allergy or a sensitivity to eggs, it's going to be the egg white, not the egg yolk. The egg yolk is filled with some of the most important fats that your body needs for your brain. So if you're not going to eat eggs, if you have an aversion to eggs and runny yolks, I get it. A lot of people do. There are supplements there's a company called Body Bio that sells PC oil. And PC oil has phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine. So these are all these types of fats that are incredibly important for the membranes of your cells, which is very important for your brain. So I would say that if you're worried about brain function, you want to make sure that you're getting those fats into your diet. There's another supplement thread, if you will, for brain that I think is really important that very few people have heard about. And this is a whole category of compounds called phospholipids, and they're called specifically plasmalogens. Plasmalogens are building blocks. If amino acids are building blocks of your muscles, plasmalogens are building blocks of your brain matter. I know.
I haven't either. So,
and it's not a peptide. But it's a phospholipid. It's a type of
supplement?
fat. It's a supplement.
It's the difference between that fat and like MCT oil and all these other fats that are out there.
So MCT oil is more of an energy source. Phospholipid, plasmalogen. So
And then olive oils and,
yeah.
avocado
So these
oils.
are like foods, right?
Okay.
But olive oil has other components that are really, really powerful, like the polyphenols and stuff like that. With the plasmalogens, you're literally talking about things that help to rebuild white matter and gray matter. So that's the coating of your nerves, the myelin sheath of your nerves and your brain.
Rebuilding. So it's
Rebuilding.
Not
It's
too late.
restoring because our brains shrink as we
Yeah,
age,
yeah.
right? So the researcher who he didn't discover plasmalogens himself, but he figured out what they did. Then he figured out how to test for them. And then he figured out how to bring them back to people.
Is there some way that you can test kind of like your baseline
Yes.
of brain matter before you start doing this to see if there's truly a difference like a year later?
So he has tests that will check your plasmalogen levels.
Okay.
In addition to a bunch of other stuff.
A test like a machine or is
No,
it just like
a
your
blood test.
Okay.
It's a blood test. But he himself has done an experiment. I think it's been over the last year and a half or so. He owns the company. he consumes massive quantities of plasmalogens, and he's a guy who's well into his 50s, I want to say. And typically your brain will start to shrink as you age, and he's shown that he has grown his brain
I didn't know that was
through
even
imaging.
What is the, I guess, what does it come in? Is it liquid
Capsules.
or capsules? And then what's like a normal dose for a 40 to 50-year-old person? What would they want to take? Or do they have to take that test to actually know how much they need to take?
I would say that, look, I could say to someone, look, get yourself a bottle of the neuro, which is the daytime formula, and the glia, which is the nighttime formula. And I would say anybody would do really well to start for a month at 4 a day of each. And then a month or 2 months, it kind of depends on your pocketbook a little bit. And then once you get to a maintenance place, you might take 2 or 3 a day.
I think what Sean's question was, what if his brain is already so big it barely fits?
It barely fits. Well, then 2 a day will be fine. But it really depends, right?
But I think being able to see like the proof, like where if it's a simple blood test, it's much easier than doing some sort of like scan or machine.
Well,
or
it's
whatever.
it's actually a really comprehensive blood test. But I'm going to go back to the first question that you asked me and explain why I answered beside the question. And what you asked me was, what are the peptides to help with brain function? And in my mind, if you haven't done your homework to figure out, does my brain have what it needs to function?
Fuel and everything
It doesn't
else.
matter how much C-Max and Selenk you take, it's not really going to help that much. I mean, it'll help some. And you'll know that if it's what you need, because over and over again, I have people in my community saying to me, oh, wow, like I started using Selenk, which C-Max and Selenk are actually medications used in Russia and other countries.
That was one of my definitely topics. Before we go into that, maybe I don't think we finished the creatine, just so people will know. Just so
we knew last night we were going to be jumping around.
It's okay. It's okay. But I think that
I hope everybody's keeping up here.
that's an important one. And I know we stopped at 5 to 10 grams a day. But I think women's concerns again is maybe they're going to gain a little bit of water weight. That's probably a concern.
But after a couple months, it goes away.
Yeah. And so I wanted to bring it up. Yeah. Because women are going to reach out and ask you that same question. It's like, well, I don't want to gain water. Yeah. So that's one question. And then the other question is maybe explain what it does for, brain health and muscle and everything else before we go on to some of the other brain health.
So the
peptides.
interest of the podcast, would you be okay if I said I did a solo episode on creatine alone?
Okay.
Yeah, they can
I just did like 10 things you need to know about creatine monohydrate. One thing I will say to your audience, look for creatine monohydrate because the type of creatine you take does matter.
Okay.
And there are now new creatine supplements that are coming out with a new form, with like a precursor for creatine called GAA. I don't remember what the GAA stands for. I apologize. And that gets 8.5% or 8.5 times more creatine into the cell.
Okay.
So the basics
So,
to know is for a woman
creatine
who's starting
monohydrate.
is take 5 grams to start.
Start slow.
Start slow.
Yeah.
And then it's okay. You'll see swelling. That's normal.
You'll see
water
a little
retention.
bit of, you might, and not everybody does. You might see a little bit of water weight.
Don't stop it. Don't get frustrated if it starts happening.
Maybe go to, and
60
if you,
days.
Yeah.
90 days.
Yeah, like after a couple of months, it'll go away. If you find that you get a bit of an upset stomach or you have any kind of discomfort, go to 2.5 grams.
Okay. And
Right?
then
Like half a teaspoon.
Where can they watch your highlights on this? Do you have a YouTube channel that it's
So I have it
or-
on, it's on my YouTube channel or on my podcast.
Okay. got it.
Anywhere you get
10
the podcast.
benefits
We
of
can put it
creatine
in
or
the,
whatever. Okay,
yeah, we can put it in the show notes if you want,
Yeah,
if that's
perfect.
helpful.
That's perfect. No, that is very helpful.
Yeah, but just high level, doesn't make you gain water weight forever.
No.
And then for your brain, it is used as an energy source, right?
Yeah.
So
And it's
essentially
all
gonna
about
help you-
energy for the brain, right?
Correct.
So there's a couple of things about the brain. So the creatine gives you energy. The other thing that we don't think about, and we kind of touched on it briefly, is blood flow. Blood flow to the brain is the thing that starts to go, right? If you we worry about cardiovascular disease, we worry about reduced blood flow because arteries are getting stiff or they're getting blocked. The brain has the exact same issues, right? Type 3 diabetes, there's also vascular dementia where there's reduced blood flow to the brain, and that's where people's brains just can't work as well because they're not getting oxygenated, they're not getting the nutrients, they're not getting things taken away. And so this is where things like nitric oxide support as we get older can start to be very beneficial, but taking care of our circulatory system, and this is where exercise really comes in. Because exercise is part of what's going to help to keep those blood vessels
Extremities,
healthy.
yeah.
It's going to keep your lipids in check. Like, it's such one of the things about the body is it's such an interconnected. We tend to be reductionist, right? We want to say, take this supplement for this, take this supplement for that. You got to take care of the whole machine, guys.
Well, I think that goes to the next thing that we need to talk about, which is so important, is setting expectations. If someone is interested, they're following you in your group. You've got 30,000 people on Facebook following you. I think the same on Instagram. Everybody's like, what do I take? What's going to give me the quickest fix, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not taking in the proper nutrients. Mm-hmm. They're not working out. And then they don't get the results that they want, thinking that peptides are their miracle drug.
Yeah.
Right? So let's talk about gut biome and gut health first and how everything kind of starts there.
Yeah.
And setting your expectations, and nothing really else is going to work unless you take care of that first.
For sure. And I would say there's 4 or 5 pillars, right? And you just mentioned 2 massive ones. There's what you're eating, there's managing your stress, and the microbiome health really fits in there. But also microbiome health is also affected by, are you sleeping? Are you getting enough sleep, and are you getting quality sleep? Like, we live in a society where I think we're starting to get it now, that sleep is your superpower.
I told you last night, that was one of the first things you said to me. I was like, what causes high cortisol? Because I know that's one of my problems. You're like, you're probably not getting enough sleep. You're running 3 businesses. You got a lot going on. You got a little baby. I'm like, no. I get 8 to 10 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
But I'm to the point now, like, we have a lake house now. And so we have 30 people over there on New Year's Eve, and the ball drops at 11 o'clock Houston time.
11 o'clock?
Like,
I love it.
11:30, I'm like, go to bed. And everyone else is up drinking. I'm like, no, I'm going to bed. And they're like, in my room, no, get up with us. I'm like, no, I set my boundaries. Meemaw likes to go to bed. I like to be in bed, ideally by 8:30, but I don't F around with my sleep. That is so important to me. I don't wake up with an alarm clock. I let it happen naturally. I don't set things really early in the morning unless it's a once in a while bride that I'm doing for early wedding. But sleep is so important to me because I cannot function, and I see a huge difference.
Yeah.
And just how snappy I am if I don't get my full 8 hours.
100%. And so sleep, exercise, nutrition, movement, which is not the same as exercise, not staying in that chair for hours, getting outside, seeing natural light when you need to see it.
Bare minimum of 15 minutes a day. Even if you're just having your coffee on the patio.
Anything.
I keep hearing this, in your feet in the grass if you can.
If you can, 100%. Even if you can get outside at the end of the day and watch the sunset. Like, think about the sun as information to your brain. Those natural sun's rays are helping your body to orient itself in terms of, should I be making melatonin? Should I not be making melatonin? And so when we're staring at our blue screens late at night or after sunset, we're sending mixed messages to the brain. So
things, 20, 30 years ago, you were a quackadoodle if you said, I'm going to go outside and sit in my grass and meditate in the morning. But sometimes just going back to what we're built to do as humans and what we kind of talked about last night, and keeping variety in your diet, all those things going back to the basics can make you a healthier person.
Yeah, 100%.
I can't stand not having natural light in the morning.
Oh God.
I come and open the curtain. She's like, no. I was like,
I'm like, my rods and my cones are burning.
I hate it so much. Like, it feels like I'm in a cave. I have to, in all my projects, my real estate projects, like, I probably way overdo the windows. They all turn out great, but I love
a lot of the houses that you buy, it's like dark caves.
Yeah,
Sean's like, open it up, take out the windows.
My mood and like getting things going in the morning. Like, I can't stand when it's just like a dark cave everywhere.
Yeah. 100%. And so going back to the microbiome, poor sleep, lack of exercise, lack of movement, too much stress, wrong foods, all of those things are going to negatively affect the microbiome. And your microbiome, think about it, houses, I think we're outnumbered 10 to 1 in terms of the organisms that live in our microbiome and the DNA in our body. They run the show. They communicate with your brain through the vagus nerve, and you communicate with them through the vagus nerve. They affect your mental health. They affect your ability to metabolize your food properly. You make your own GLP-1s through the gut. Like, it's everything starts there. So the first thing we can do, to your point, is by leveraging all of those different pillars that we talked about, think about it as you're taking care of yourself, but you're also creating the proper environment for this microbiome. And the microbiome is, I think it's been a major topic of discussion, let's say for 20 years. It's still a dark hole. There's still so much that needs to be learned about it, but there's enough that's known now that you just had Joel Green on your show not that long ago. Guys, if you missed that episode, you got to go back and listen to this, and check out his work, because he does a couple of gut resets that are so simple. And all he's doing is using food for the most part to tend that garden, right? And you've got so many different species of plant in there, and it's all about the ratio of the good to what we might think of as bad species, but we need them all, right? So
I do have a question. So I think a lot of people probably are wondering, like, I've been eating good for 1 or 2 days and I can't tell I can't tell a difference. And so how long does it take to maybe reset your gut if you've been eating like crap for 10 years, processed food,
Taco Bell.
along with
Funyuns.
other bad lifestyle?
Not the Funyuns.
And
Not
the
the
Funyuns.
Funyuns.
Oh,
Whoa,
yes.
whoa.
Sister.
Other bad choices in lifestyle habits. How long does it usually take to kind of get back to like a baseline or something that would give you like optimal performance or optimal mood? And
yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that there's a pat answer. I would say that most people will, if they truly clean up their diet, and there's actually this really simple program that came out years ago called the Whole 30. I don't know if you guys have heard of
I've heard
Yep.
60 to
My
90
sister, I think,
days
did
from
that.
a couple different people.
Yeah,
That's
but,
kinda what I hear.
but
Like,
often people will feel better after 30.
oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
You know, like, as a matter of fact, I've had, when I was practicing as a nutritionist, after a week to 10 days, I'd get calls from people going, oh my God. Here's the crazy thing. Nobody realizes how crappy they feel until they feel better.
Yeah, I just think most people need to
That's
realize
what I
that it
always
takes
say.
time, and most things in our body have a cycle of 90 days.
Yeah, but it doesn't take that long. Like, it doesn't take that long to get a toehold. It doesn't take that long for your energy to get a little bit better, or
It
for the
depends on where you're
bloating
at.
to goes down.
I mean, if you're
And
already eating great and then you switch
Yeah.
over, maybe you won't see as big of a difference as
Yeah.
quickly. But for someone to go from like 0 to 60 and say, okay, I'm cutting out processed food, no more center of the grocery store, no more seed oils or whatever,
Yeah.
which I'm going to have a really hard time getting rid of the seed oils. But, little baby steps.
baby steps
to get you
like,
there. Not feeling like get
100%. But if you can do something like this Whole 30 for 30 days, I would, assuming that that's not what you're already doing, if you're kind of consuming a standard American diet, you do Whole 30 for 30 days, you will feel better.
So the Whole 30 is 30
There's no-
ingredients. Is that what it is?
No, it's just they've gotten rid of, I think they get rid of grains, they get rid of,
So what's 30 stand for? 30 days or 30?
it's a 30
things?
days.
Okay, 30
Yeah,
days.
that you just
It's like
kind
a
of,
whole
it's
food
kind of like a
diet, though, right?
paleo diet.
Okay.
So,
There's
I
no
would
gluten or-
say, I can't remember if they get rid of dairy and eggs. I would say dairy and eggs are two other problem foods that I would probably
Goes back
just
to my
set
diet.
aside for a little while.
No grains, no dairy, no eggs. That's pretty much the diet.
Yeah. But when you eliminate those, there's not a whole lot left. I mean, you're
talking
eating,
about?
you're eating
There's
vegetables. I mean, no, I'm saying
Chicken
like you're
and
eating,
fish and beef and lamb.
you're getting the meat
Yeah.
products.
And
You're
vegetables.
getting the meat products,
And
which you really are going back to what came from the earth. I mean,
Potato-
nothing
potatoes
processed
and-
for him. Nothing.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that.
There, yeah, like you said, there
Even
is
dried fruit, you eat nothing like that.
real fruit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, dried fruit is concentrated.
Yeah. Because it starts to morph itself.
Although there's some interesting ingredients in certain dried fruits, but it's just, the problem is it's candy to your brain, right? You want to try to avoid to flip that switch in the brain that says, ooh, quick energy.
Well, also, one thing I've noticed too is I'm not really a big soda drinker, but when I have pizza, I love soda. But if I don't have a soda for 3 months and then I have one, it just burns. It feels uncomfortable. I don't like it, and I stop craving it.
Yeah.
But for these people who drink Diet Coke or Coke Zero, whatever, the aspartame or whatever, it's like you're still addicted to that, right?
It's a
And
drug.
Literally every single day they have to have it. But if you let yourself cleanse itself from the inside out, you don't crave it as much when your body kind of forgets what it's like to get that high.
You do this thing, and it's one of the things I talk to people about sometimes when they're using GLP-1s, is you go through a process called recalibrating your taste buds.
No, I totally.
Because
feel
what
that.
it is we've become addicted to hyper palatable foods that have been made to taste so darn good.
So then when you have the chicken, like Sean eats for breakfast, you're like, But he actually makes it taste good. You've like perfected the art of seasoning it. So it sounds weird, but Sean, I think I told you last night, he eats chicken, blueberries, strawberries, avocado, and sweet potato all mixed up with rosemary and oregano or something.
It used to be
pink sea
set.
salt.
And now you just
It's
mush it together.
Yeah,
But it's
just
actually not bad. And a lot of people, a lot of my followers, they're
know,
like,
they all
what does
do
Sean
it.
eat? What does Sean eat? And so I posted a picture and they're like, that looks really good. I'm going to try it. I mean, I would say more than a handful of people have said now they eat that every morning for breakfast and they love it.
Yeah. If you follow my diet recipe, though, it's a lot of calories. And so most people that message
They don't
me
have
that are
as
your
much,
followers,
yeah.
I'm like, cut down the calories. Don't eat that much.
I know some ladies are like, can you give me Sean's?
like-
I'm taking in 3,500 calories a day or whatever it is. I
It's like,
want to be
no,
just like
don't-
Sean.
Don't do that.
Ouch.
Yeah. The thing about diet is, people, like you said, 30 days, they will 100% feel better. If they follow something for 30 days straight and they cut out all the processed foods, there is no way.
No,
But no cheating. No, don't cheat Sundays like you do. when
not
you're
like 3
buying-
days
yeah.
and then
You gotta be
3 days off and then 3
honest
days
with it,
on.
yeah.
Try to do it
just
for
just mentally say to yourself, the donuts will still be there.
there is no possible way that they don't feel 10 times better than they did before. It can't happen. There's no way. And so people, when I was talking to Jay about it, we talked about, it's like, man, people just don't know how good they can feel because they've never exercised. They've never eaten good. So they're just like, this is how I feel.
We
We
normalize feeling
and that's what I
crappy.
told them. I was like, if they could just like get a glimpse for like a couple days of like how good they could actually feel, they would do it. Yeah. They just are so used to living that certain way. It's like, this is my life. That's just how I feel.
Well, you'd be surprised. I've seen people do the thing, feel so much better, and say, Nat, my social life is too important to me. They hang out with people that drink a lot. They
don't be the one
eat a
one
certain
man out.
way. And they're like, and I'm just sitting there going, like, you realize you're making a life decision here.
Well, I mean,
Like, you're
Sean does everything
making a
that we do.
decision.
He just has, special requirements. When we go to a restaurant, we
Yeah.
go to specific restaurants that have specific things.
We
And
go out
he
to eat.
eats his way and I eat my way because it's just too complicated at home. I'm cooking 2 separate meals.
We go out to eat. Well, and we're staying
I
home
eat
tonight.
his meals
We're staying
sometimes,
home
but-
tonight, and she will cook 2 separate meals. And we're at the lake, and there's 20 people there. I'll eat something different. Not always, but it'll just be a little bit different.
But
I don't
how
care.
different is it
My
really?
social life is the same. It's
Yeah.
I go out
I
to
mean,
dinner.
no sauces. I'm a sauce.
Yeah, but you can do
But if I-
sauces on the side, and then he can choose
But
not
if
to
we go
put it
to
on,
any
and you
nice
put yours on.
any nice restaurant that we go to in town, they'll all make whatever you want. And the first thing they ask you when you come to the table, what are your allergies?
Sean's like, nothing. I'm like, yes,
I used-
something.
Well,
yes.
so I used to say nothing because it technically wasn't like a peanut allergy or something. It was just more, it makes me feel bad, right?
I just know he's going to shit his pants if they mess up.
So, but sometimes they would forget. But if you say there's an allergy, they will 100% make it the way
Oh,
that
yeah.
you ask them to make
Well,
it.
look, I told them last night pistachio nuts.
Yeah,
and
yeah, they
this
will
poor
100%
waitress was
make
like, yeah, there's
But
no
pine
nuts.
nuts.
Then she's like, pine nuts? I'm like, no, not nuts with a P.
So-
just pistachio.
People think that's the first thing they think. It's like, oh, I have to change my social life. You don't really
You
have
can lock
to.
yourself at home and eat grilled chicken for every meal.
You really don't have to change your social life. They're just using that as like an excuse because you can make it happen pretty much anywhere you go.
There's actually a really cool drink called, I don't know if you guys have ever come across or heard of kava. Kava.
No, not that one. There's a kava with a C bought out Zoe's Kitchen or whatever, but different.
Yeah. So kava with a K comes from Southeast Asia, and it's a root. It's a fermented drink. I think it's fermented drink made from a root, and they have kava bars. And kava bars are starting to pop up here and there. And kava has really interesting, kind of relaxing effects.
Like hemp or
So you can have a kava cocktail and get that social lube
Oh.
without the alcohol.
So we say
which is really
kava
interesting.
bars. Is that like a nutritional
So there's
bar?
so it's like they're like when we were in I was in Maui and we were in a town called Paia. I think it's called Paia. And they had a kava bar. And so you walk in there and it's like a full, you would think it's an alcohol bar, but it's all different kinds of kava and they make different cocktails. And in Boca, when I was just in Florida, there was a kava bar at down
like,
at the
"No
cove by the
way."
beach. I'm like, no way. And there's a company called True Kava, Kava. And they sell drinks online and they also have tinctures of kava. And what's interesting about kava is it's also anxiolytic. So it can help with anxiety.
I need that. Sean points at me. I need
Well,
that.
no, order some, test it out. It's like,
Yeah,
it's
check it
gonna
out. See if
So-
I can connect you guys. Anyway, so we haven't talked too much about brain peptides. I'm sorry, but I just think they're I think peptides are so fascinating and they're so powerful. Like the bioregulators that we haven't even touched on, which are they're like 2 to 4 amino acid chains, and what's amazing about them is they can get not only do they get into the cell, but they get into the nucleus and they help the DNA. They almost repair the DNA's ability to produce proteins. So you're rejuvenating tissues, glands, and organs from within at a cellular level. So now we're talking about a process, like think about it as the tires, the tread on your tires wears down, you're restoring the tread on your tires. Like, how cool is that, right? And so one of the things about GLP-1s that can be tricky is it can be challenging to the pancreas. And I think a lot of people have heard that you can get pancreatitis. And it doesn't happen very often, but it does. And so there's a bioregulator for the pancreas. So I know quite a number of practitioners who, when their patients are using GLP-1s, will also do a run of the pancreas bioregulator. They might also do the blood vessel bioregulator because we want to make sure that circulation is optimized. So
on the bioregulator side, we touched on this on another podcast and it was super interesting to me. So it sounds like it's something that if you're going to take it, is it like a once a year thing for 6 weeks? Or like if you want to have good liver health or prostate health or whatever, how often would you take a bioregulator? Because most of them are capsules, right?
Well, so number one, you're going to hate my answer.
Okay.
It's 2 words. It's the dreaded, it depends. But
yeah, I guess what I'm saying is
but wait,
I guess peptides are more...
I've got to follow up on this. So let's back up for a second. Okay. So there's 3 categories of bioregulators. You've got the natural bioregulators that are injectable, that were used, that you can only virtually get in Russia, right? So these are actual... they actually take the pineal gland, let's say if it's a pineal bioregulator, they actually take the pineal gland of young calves and they turn it into a preparation, if you will, and they refine it, and it's an intramuscular injection. You can virtually only get that in Russia, if you can even still get it. Then there's the bioregulators we can acquire here. One is the oral bioregulators, which are also an extract either from young cows or pigs. Usually it's from mammals, and they're made into capsules. There's no protein left from the animal in there, guys. You do get the 2 to 5 amino acid chain, so those building blocks of protein that are arranged in a very specific way, but you also get cofactors. So it's a really interesting nutritional supplement, if you will. Then there's the synthetic bioregulators. So this is where they've identified that 2 to 5 amino acid chain, and it can be resynthesized in a lab. And those tend to be delivered either by subcutaneous injection with an insulin needle, or there's now increasingly, there's some oral sprays. I've even seen transdermal drops. The thing is that they're so tiny that they can get just about through anything. So I think what we're going to see over the next couple of years is an explosion of an evolution of the delivery methods of these compounds.
You said something last night about an eye drop. What was it that you were saying was really good for the eyes?
So there are bioregulators for the eyes, and I would say the blood vessel bioregulator will always be part of the eye stack, right? Because bioregulators are typically used in combinations. But what I was talking about last night was BPC 157. One of the little known facts about BPC is it actually can be quite powerful for dry eye and different eye conditions. But you have to get those compounded by a pharmacist. Right now, it's pretty tricky because the regulations around BPC are pretty restrictive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hope in the community of, let's say, longevity and alternative, not even functional medicine, that the new administration will start to loosen up some of that stuff, some of those regulations, but it still remains to be seen.
And so bioregulators, the difference in peptides, they've actually, from what I understand, they've actually been around for a really long time, and there's a lot of human research.
Huge research.
And so that's the difference in some of these peptides. There's not a lot of human research that's available on a ton of them. I mean, years and years and
well, there is research. It's just it's the entities that spend the most money on research are pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah,
and so the pharmaceutical companies spent the money on the GLP-1s because they knew that if they could modify this little protein called the GLP-1 and extend its half-life from seconds to 6 days, magic was going to maybe happen, and magic definitely did happen. Right? But with BPC 157, at this stage of the game, nobody's invested the time, the energy, and the money to make it into a drug. So, if you go to PubMed, which is the place where we all go to look up research, there is a lot published research on BPC 157, probably not as much human as we would like. One of the problems with BPC that freaks people out a bit is that it drives something called angiogenesis. And what angiogenesis is, angiogenesis literally means the growth of blood vessels.
It's the same reaction that you get from growth hormone, which people are scared to take up for the same reason.
Growth hormone's a little bit different, but again, it's
you have
also
cancer in your body. It could supercharge it.
Exactly. And so with angiogenesis, people are concerned that, well, if it's going to, maybe if you have a tumor, it's going to drive more blood to the tumor. It hasn't played out yet. But have there been enough double-blind clinical studies done? Not yet. The fact of the matter is that that's part of its superpower, because if you have an injury, especially when it comes to tendons and ligaments that are really poor in blood flow at the best of times, if you can help to bring more blood flow to the area, you're going to get better healing. The other thing that it does that a lot of people don't realize is it upregulates the expression of your growth hormone receptors. So now you've got catcher's mitts. I always imagine like these little catcher's mitts for growth hormone that pop up and they're just ready to go, which is why so many people in their Wolverine stack will include the growth hormone secretagogues like CJC and ipamorelin, because now you're stimulating the body to make more of its own growth hormone, and now you've got more catcher's mitts, and you've got more blood flow, and all, so now you've got this sped up.
So I have a question about that, because I feel like that's the one I've talked about the most, is BPC 157 with something TB500.
TB500.
That's a stack I was taking, aka the Wolverine pack, because it helps you repair from the inside out.
Yeah.
Is it better to take the intermuscular, or subcutaneous? What is
subcutaneous?
Directed to the area that needs repair, or is it better to do it on your torso, like on your stomach, so that way it spreads through everything? I've heard different.
Great question. And there are two camps. And if you put the two camps in a room, there's going to be blood and feather all over the walls. People
maybe just every other shot, you just kind of change it up.
So I would say that if you're working with a physician or a practitioner who will actually target the area, it's probably the best way to go.
But I think people need to know
you're
you're not
injecting
it straight in. It's in the
nearby, it's going to go systemic anyway. But there's a big camp of people that insist that they know that if they apply it directly to that area, even though it's not approved for human use, we're talking about theoretical research here.
Yes.
That they get better results. So it depends. It depends on dosing. But I want to go back to your bioregulator question, because you asked, how often would you use it? What's the protocol? That kind of thing. And I kind of sideswiped us into the whole, because it's just one of my pet peeves is that people confuse the synthetic and the natural bioregulators. So to begin with, they have different names and the dosages are wildly different. Right? So with the synthetic bioregulators, we're talking about micrograms, and with the oral bioregulators, you're talking about milligrams. Let's say I had a client, for example, who was an older man, and he was getting up 4 times a night to go to the bathroom.
Prostate's a good one. That's every man pretty much at some point.
As you age, the prostate enlarges, and so there's more pressure on the urethra. So I had him do 30 days of the prostate bioregulator with the blood vessel bioregulator, right? We did both together. At the end of 30 days, I get a call, and it's like, guess what? I'm only getting up twice a night. And he was getting up 4 or 5 times a night. So then what we did, we weren't fully where we wanted to go. So then we did 10 days a month for the next 2 to 3 months until we got it to the point where he was down to maybe once a night. And then once we got there, we took a break.
Most guys have problems with this, especially as they get older. Does it actually shrink the prostate, or what is it doing? Because I know prostate gets enlarged.
So I would imagine it shrinks the prostate. One thing I would also say is make sure that you've had your PSA checked, right? Because we don't want to I don't know that it would exacerbate prostate cancer, but I sure wouldn't want to take a chance. You don't want to be the guy that finds out the wrong way. So again, as with everything, do your homework, get your screening done. The cool thing is, and we were talking about this last night, some of the new screening tests for cancer that are coming out would blow your mind. Like there's blood tests now that can detect cancer before there's even a tumor formed. There's a test for breast cancer that tests your tears. because women secrete 2 proteins in their tears when they're positive for breast cancer.
Wow.
So
No more shoving your boobs in a machine.
well, the shoving the boobs in the machine is already old news. I'm telling you now, there's new imaging
that's what I've heard.
mind-bending.
Yeah, just the machines are so expensive. Not everybody's,
So
gotten over
everybody's
that. Yeah.
invested millions in the
Yes,
machines,
they
and
were-
nobody wants to let them go, except for all the women
Yeah.
who are so done being told, oh, we've got to squish them, we've got to irradiate them, but it doesn't really work on dense tissue, which you have, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I've
And
heard
then
that too.
because you're at high risk, we're going to do it more. Okay, help me understand.
Yeah, I know. I've heard the same thing.
So we're trying to amortize the investment somehow. So anyway, so I would imagine that it helps to bring the prostate back to a more normal size. I can't think of another way that it would work realistically, because if you're losing the urge to urinate, then there's no longer that pressure.
They are really interesting though, just for long term, as they get used more and more, there's just so many different cool things that they could help with longevity and just living a better quality life. And
Yeah, like we're helping to reverse biological age at this point, right? I've got a group in my community where I'm coaching them through a year of bioregulators, and we're cycling through the bioregulators, and it's pretty impressive.
Well, I have a question. I have a peptide that I don't want to skip over, and I know we don't have a ton of time left, so I want to squeeze this one in because it's really important for me to learn, and I've been wanting to learn, and I haven't even started researching, just kind of through some words of friends that are kind of in the industry, peptide industry, is we've talked a lot about what we can do to heal from the inside. I want to know outside.
Oh, the
I want to know.
GHK.
Yes. I want to know GHK. Tell me how that works. Everybody knows biotin is good for hair, nails, and skin. What is the difference? What does this do to help with, I don't know if it helps with melasma, sun damage, cell growth. What is it?
So remember how we said magnesium helps in 300 different processes in the body? Well, GHK copper was studied, I think it was Stanford University, and I believe it's either 1,000 or 4,000 different genes are reset to more youthful settings by GHK. It gets mind-bending. So when we're little, when we're young, we have, I don't fully remember the units, but we have like 200 units per liter up in our blood. By the time we're 40, it's like less than half. So our levels of GHK plummet as we age. What GHK does, so it flips, like imagine it running up and down your DNA, flipping little switches up and down.
Turning the breakers back on.
So some of the things, exactly. So some of the things it does is it upregulates the production, you're gonna love this,
Hyaluronic acid.
collagen and elastin.
I thought you were going to say hyaluronic acid.
No, I wasn't going to say hyaluronic acid. It would be nice, but I haven't read that. So it upregulates
Well, we
collagen
like
and
that too.
elastin. It helps if somebody has a wound. It helps to reduce scarring. It helps the brain. It is. I did another solo episode just on GHK.
I'm going to go watch that one.
It's crazy. And every time I go back to PubMed to look up GHK, I learn something new. So the cool thing about GHK, because it's only 3 amino acids, it can be used topically and it can be taken in, and it can also be used internally.
At the same time? Or one
Oh,
of it?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
the
No, well,
sub-
except that it's on the no-fly zone. It's on the no-fly list for internal use
So in your animals, of course.
in your animals.
So subcutaneous would be the best way to use it if you were going to use it.
But I would say for aesthetic purposes, you might microneedle and put on some really nice blue
cat, of
serum
course, yeah.
on your cat. No, actually, I think that's allowed. Now, for topical use, you want to use GHK-Cu. Cu stands for copper.
Okay.
So GHK needs copper to be activated.
You said copper binds to, you said something last night.
So basically, copper. It basically, think of copper as the spark plug that gets it going. So when they've done the studies on animals internally, like with in administering it by injection or whatever the case may be, they might use GHK copper. You might also just use GHK if you're not deficient in copper, because it'll bind to the copper in the body.
Getting a blood test first to find out, which is something special you have to add. It's not.
Yeah, there's a
panels.
There's a test called the ceruloplasmin test that will test your ratio of zinc to copper, because they exist in a very specific ratio, which is a good baseline.
So if it's in the realm of where it needs to be naturally, then you can just do the GHK.
But topically, you always want to use GHK-Cu, because topically it can't access your copper.
Okay. And then
Subcutaneous, it's just GHK.
Yeah, GHK copper burns badly.
Oh, that's what he
the
was
one-
saying.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
what he said.
It
He said
really
most
burns.
people, and he said, was it different
So you
blood type?
can't
No, he
take
said
it
if you're
subcutaneous?
Fitzpatrick 1, or this is what Jake Campbell said, if you're Fitzpatrick 1 or 2, you tend to tolerate it better, which I was shocked because that's me. Usually, I swear, my unmedical trained opinion says
Yeah.
that people with Fitzpatrick 1 and 2 just have different nerve receptors than other people. Things just
Interesting.
hurt us worse. I mean, even just having fair skin, which is a little bit of leftover self-tanner, but I'm German and Irish and English and Scottish, so very, very
You've got great
pale,
skin.
fair. No, I don't. It's a lot of lasering to look like this because I laid in tanning beds forever. But I'm just sensitive to the touch. I'm sensitive to Botox, just pain overall. But also I need a lot more pain medication, like when I'm at the dentist.
Oh, interesting.
Than other people because I feel it more.
But that's a genetic thing too, though. That has to do with your genetic pathways.
So
But-
GHK, you can inject it because the pain's too high, or
So GHK copper, for people who have used it subcutaneously, many people will find it much, much too.
He
So you can
said, I
just
think
take
he said on
orally.
your podcast,
So-
that people with high melanin, like dark melanin, are the ones that feel that it's more painful, it burns more.
so
But-
what is the ideal way of?
But so if someone was going to break the rules and do this, they would use GHK on its own, and there's no pain.
And it still has a lot of the benefits.
Well, it has all the benefits because you have copper in you already have copper in.
Is there any other way to get more copper? I mean, there has to be a way.
Of course, if you eat liver is a great source of zinc and copper, bioavailable.
So
You
foie
can take,
gras.
if you don't like liver, foie gras. I love your approach to this stuff.
I love that stuff.
I know.
Even though my favorite restaurant
I'm not
stopped
sure
selling it.
what the copper, but you can also get desiccated liver capsules. If you don't like eating liver,
Cod liver oil, he has some of that stuff.
desiccated liver capsules I think would be more
I just don't
better.
like burping up.
No, you won't burp up
okay.
liver capsules because they're dried out. You have more chances of burping up.
I can't do that.
And then GHK by itself, taken subcutaneously, how long would, like, if I wanted to take it for a year, would it just go on for 6 weeks and
Cycle
then
it,
maybe
or-
go off for 6 weeks, or like what would
That was
be
my question too. is
Yeah.
kind of
cycling.
the ideal way to
I'm a fan of cycling everything. There's an argument that says that because this is one of those compounds that it exists in the body and we lose it as we age, there's an argument that says, well, maybe you could use it continuously. I don't know the answer to the question.
a lot of-
So
a lot of
as a,
people
you
are
know,
saying
and
that.
especially if you're people using GHK with copper, you do have to think about, over a long period of time, might you mess up your own ratios and overdo the copper? So, you want to work with a practitioner who's going to help to guide you and help you to ask the right questions, look for the signs that you might be overdoing or underdoing something, and
If you're
then
getting blood
find your
work,
way.
if you're getting that blood work and that test, like
Yeah.
once every 30 or 60 days to kind of see where you're landing.
Yeah, and I
that will
think
kinda guide
ceruloplasmin you
on-
might do 60 to 90 days. I don't think you need to do every
'cause I'm really
30.
interested. That's what the one I'm going to try next. But there's also ipamorelin and tesamorelin. Let's talk about that for a second.
Well, I think ipamorelin is the one that you were trying to.
I bought a stack.
Yeah,
but
but
then we were told later that probably wasn't best for a female.
So let's talk about ipamorelin and CJC, I think it is, because I think that's probably what Jay said would be beneficial for more females, not tesamorelin.
Yeah, I'm not. I think I'm not as gender specific. Tesamorelin
and when I
was
said better for females, I didn't mean that.
yeah.
It's better.
Tesamorelin was developed for a different purpose. Tesamorelin was developed and is available as a medication. It was developed for people who were using HIV medications that was driving fat deposition around their organs, right? That's that dreaded visceral fat, right? And that can lead to massive health issues. And so what's interesting is that the same people that discovered and developed tesamorelin is the same guys that developed CJC1295. So these are growth hormone secretagogues. What's also interesting to notice is that CJC1295 is used in dosages of, let's say, 100 to 300 micrograms a day, whereas tesamorelin is used for the visceral fat purpose for 1 to 2 milligrams a day. So it's exponentially much larger dosages. And now both of these are growth hormone secretagogues. So both of these are going to stimulate the body to make more of its own growth hormone. And ipamorelin works through a different pathway, but also does the same thing. So the CJC1295 and ipamorelin work really well together. And tesamorelin as well can be partnered with ipamorelin. The tricky thing with all of these is if I see allergic reactions, I see it a lot with these guys.
Okay, so that's a good question because a friend of mine, she's like, what do I take? What are you doing? And then, there was a special on our peptide website that we shop on. It was a Black Friday sale or whatever it was. And she was having rashes at the injection site.
Yeah, so she can't use it.
So that's what I was going to ask you.
Step away.
Okay. And what does the rash mean? Why do some people get that? Is it just like they're allergic to something that's compounded and mixed with it, or what's causing that reaction?
No, it's driving a histamine reaction, which is an allergic reaction. And so she may unknowingly have some histamine issues.
Well, she was doing it in her stomach. She sent me a picture of her stomach. She tried her leg, and she wasn't getting that.
That's really interesting because usually wherever you do it is you're going to feel it. And it may be that I would say that, I used CJC1 and ipamorelin for about a month and a half. Loved it. I was doing CrossFit at the time. I was using, I had
the
my
major
Wolverine.
benefits you saw.
I was just recovering from my workouts
recovery.
like nobody's business. It was amazing. And then one day, my body was like, well, first of all, I started to kind of get these, I thought I was getting mosquito bites. Like it was the summertime and I was like, oh, like I got this really itchy welt. And I was like, oh, I must have a bite. And then I started to realize there was a correlation between the welts.
You were allergic to.
And so I can't touch this stuff because the last time I used it, I ended up with a golf ball. Like my body was just like,
I said whenever I was doing IVF, Cetrotide, I would get the same thing whenever I didn't inject that in my stomach. It would be like a little blotchy red rash around the injection site, but it would be gone by the next morning. It wasn't.
Yeah,
like
so that's the thing, right? If it self-resolves, then that's one thing. But if it kind of builds and builds, if it builds and builds and starts to escalate. So I've known people who've had, like not very often, but I've heard of people who've had an anaphylactic reaction in the end. Like the immune system is just like, okay, here's the thing. I drew this line in the sand. You crossed it. I'm done with it.
I've heard that from a couple of people that knew some people that were starting a bunch of them at one time.
Oh my God, which is the worst thing to do.
I know. So like taking a big stack of a bunch of different things right off the bat. And so then that could be a possibility just because you don't know your body's allergic to some of the things.
Now you don't even know what you're allergic to. So, it's even a supplement. It doesn't have to be a peptide.
Sure.
Like you start something new, you start it on its own so that you can understand how's my body responding to this.
I agree with that too. I've been told different things from everybody, just like he said. Peptides are an opinion and everybody has a different one. But at the end of the day, cycling in, cycling out, so your body doesn't get too acclimated to it and then it not working as well.
Yeah, so the growth hormone,
mixing too many things.
Yeah, and the growth hormone secretagogues in particular can cause kind of like an involution of receptors, not so much an involution, like a numbing of the receptors, right? So typically, and I think that ipamorelin was taken off the no-fly list by the FDA. I think they backed down on that one.
So it can be compounded again as well.
I think it can be compounded again, but typically the recommendation is to use it for 5 days and then take 2 days off. So 5 days on, 2 days off, and I would say after the longest I would have someone use it would be 8 to 12 weeks, and then you would take off like 4 to 6 weeks before you went back to
my injection, so I can buy more and kind of understand where we're at. Because I thought I went through it too fast, and so I was like, I don't know if Sean was overdosing me again or.
No. I know what to order now.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. I don't know if I just
I
got the
understand
baby
it
starter
enough.
pack.
No, I understand it enough now.
We're like the Wild West over here. Like, get some NATO. Let's put it in and see what happens.
You're Texans.
Exactly.
So just for me personally, I do want to go over a couple of the brain cognition, I guess, peptides that could enhance or help like memory and cognition and just maybe make you think a little bit faster. And I think you touched on it for a brief second, but it was Selenk and C-Max was one of them. And then
there's two. Those are two.
And then there's one or two more that I'll remember once we go over this one, I'm sure. But Selenk and C-Max, I know one helped more for anxiety.
Yeah.
And then one helped more for mood/memory, maybe.
Yeah. And so I think that, and you know what, I apologize. I've got a lot of information in my head and sometimes the wires get crossed.
No, it's okay.
So I couldn't tell you at this minute which is which, but one of them is definitely more anxiolytic.
Yes.
And the other one is definitely more cognition, mood, and memory, that kind of thing.
And a lot of times they're sold together.
They're sold together, but so here's the thing. So when I first went to peptide school, when I did my training in peptides, what I was taught is that a better way to go would be to use one for 4 weeks and then use the other one for 4 weeks.
Okay.
And then depending on how you respond, you might keep cycling between them, or you might find one is more effective for you than the other. It's going to depend on where your
Genetics.
Well, it's not even genetics. It's just where are you having your shortcomings? Where do you need the support, right? And so give yourself the chance to experience, what does it feel like when I use C-Max on its own? Now, what does it feel like when I use Selenk on its own? Now, if you start feeling bad, don't wait 4 weeks to stop, right? This is one of three things that's going to happen here. You're going to feel nothing, so it's not your thing. You're going to feel better. It's a win. You're going to feel worse. The number of people
what's the feel worse? What is that?
It could actually, it can have a paradoxical effect.
Increase anxiety, increase some other issues, or
it make you fidgety or angry or depressed.
Sped up a little bit,
Yeah. And so if you're feeling those things, and I see this, shockingly, BPC 157, which everybody runs around saying, oh my God, it's the best stuff. It's nothing can possibly go wrong. Nothing could be further from the truth. Like there's a small subset of people where BPC 157, which on paper is supposed to balance the dopaminergic, serotonergic, and GABAergic centers of the brain, actually drives their anxiety. So if you're that person, whether it's C-Lank, C-Max, or BPC or anything else,
maybe start as low as you can. It's something that's going to affect those type of receptors.
Yeah.
And then make sure that you don't feel a certain way.
And build slowly.
I do remember the other one.
Cerebral lysin.
That's one, and then dihexa was the other one.
Yeah, so dihexa is really interesting. I personally tried dihexa a few years ago. It did nothing for me, but I will tell you what I was told about dihexa, which I think is really interesting, because it promotes the growth of new neurons and and building new pathways. If a person is going to do a run of dihexa, make this the time that you learn a musical instrument. You learn how to dance. You learn another language. Absolutely. Because here's the thing. Imagine that you've got a garden with no seeds and you pour a bunch of fertilizer in there. Nothing's going to grow. So
you're going to see if you're retaining what you're learning.
You're building, you're making, you're using it.
It's supposed to repair old neurons and build
new ones. And build new connections.
Both of us.
It's like exercise.
Yeah, that's super interesting to me, only because I don't know.
That's kind of what I want to work on next, the skin one and then that one.
Yeah, I try to do, now that I feel good all the time, my whole life's pretty optimized.
Yep.
I do want to try a couple things for performance and and it's not physical performance. Like I don't really care if I get faster or stronger, long as I'm in good health.
Well, you look like shit. You should. Should be really concerned.
But I'm not trying to increase my performance in the gym.
I hope you guys are watching this and not listening to this.
It's on video everywhere. But what interests me as I get older is the mental performance and being able to have the energy to do all this stuff, run all my companies, hang out with my kid, and I like everything together is what interests me the most. And so that's like kind of what path I want to go down. That's why I'm asking.
Because how are you going to help Liam with his homework if you can't add 1 + 1? Your brain's broken. So.
He won't. He's going to.
I know, because
homeschool anyway,
and you're going to be helping with his homework.
You only need basic reading, writing, math, anyways. You don't need all that other stuff.
I know we talked about peptide math, and I'm not going to make you do that.
I'm happy to do it. We just got to get into the metric system.
I know. She's from Canada. She's used to it. It comes ezy.
So dihexa, and then the last one, which I've heard, cerebral lysin.
Cerebral lysin.
Cerebral lysin.
So cerebral lysin is an actual extract of pig's brains.
Okay.
It's very controversial. It is used as a medication in many countries, not this one. And I've used it, I think I did a week of 5 milligrams a day by IV, which is is it actually by IV? It's not typically the best. But cerebral lysin is really interesting, right? Because we talk about it for brain, but what's our brain made of? It's nerves. I've heard of it being used also to help heal nerves when people have nerve damage. So if you have a doctor who's very skilled and who can inject it either into the nerve sheath or right by the nerve, it will actually help to heal that nerve. I've heard of it also being used intra-articularly to help with damaged knees.
Or like strokes, someone had a stroke or something.
100% for strokes, for like any kind of real advanced neurodegenerative issues. It can definitely be a component, or it is being used as a component in other countries. But, the plasmalogens I was talking to you about earlier, the guy who's behind those, Dr. Dan Goodenow, he's reversing Alzheimer's,
so
Parkinson's,
that's the one that helps
ALS.
with the exterior of the cell,
and he's not even using peptides. He's rebuilding things. So I don't think he's using peptides. I mean, they're in his wheelhouse.
That's the one you said that helps the cell structure,
Yeah.
exterior.
The
Because it
cell
breaks
membrane.
down over time. Not the little
Yeah.
furry stuff on the outside, just the actual membrane.
Yeah. So the cell membrane, think of the cell membrane. A lot of people think of the nucleus of the cell as the brain because it holds the DNA and all the organelles and stuff. The cell membrane is actually the brain of your cell because it decides what comes in and what comes out. And it needs to be flexible. It's the reason why, not that anybody here would ever eat such a thing, but it's the reason why eating horrible fats, like what you might find in a Funyun, for example, would be really bad for you because those damaged seed oils are very stiff. And your body is like, I'm going to date myself. That your body's like MacGyver. You give it a piece of gum and a toothpick, it'll do it'll get the job done, but it won't be optimal. So your cell membrane needs fat. If all that's around is damaged fats, it's going to use those damaged fats, but now it's going to make a membrane that's very stiff.
So is that visceral fat? Is that why we don't want? What does visceral fat do? What's bad for it on your body when it starts to cover your organs?
So it covers the organs and it stops the organs from working properly. Okay. And it drives inflammation. Like it's again, like
it's kind of doing the same thing for your cells that does.
Since,
Smothers it almost, or
not exactly. I think
since the
different.
whole exploding awareness of seed oils is coming out, can you explain, over time what that does somebody when they take a seed oil?
Wrong person.
I've heard different things where it says it takes it 4 years to get out of your cell, and I just don't know.
I think there's seed oil hysteria right now.
Okay.
I do. I think that there's a middle ground on seed oils.
We know it's not bad. We know it's bad.
It's not optimal. There's
what it is? I think seed oils is too big a term, right? There's no doubt that Mazola is really, really, really bad for you. There's no doubt that superheated, bad quality, cheap fats are really horrible, right? There's also a world of research that uses good quality oils derived from seeds that actually shows some benefit. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a researcher. I sit and look at the whole world, and I try to be as balanced as I can be, helping people to make the best choices and not make themselves absolutely crazy. And I think that because you now have people running around who, if like one drop of seed oil touches their lips, they're pretty sure that for the next 7 years, their bodies are going to be like...
It was like gluten. When people start with the gluten allergy, everybody's celiac.
So I think that generally speaking, the best fats and oils that are going to be the most beneficial for your body are going to be the things that we know are good. Things like extra virgin olive oil, things like some butter, but not too much for everybody, because for some people that's saturated fat. And I know people are going to crucify me for this. Look, we all have our opinions. I'm a person, I come from a Mediterranean background. If I eat too much saturated fat, it drives inflammation in my body.
So what about beef tallow everyone's starting to use too?
So again, it depends on you. It depends on your background, and it depends on how your body responds to it. There's definitely, I'm a huge believer that animal fats are more beneficial for us than a lot of these damaged fat. Any of damaged fat, really. But I think that how much of it you really need really depends on the person. It also depends on the rest of your diet, right? If you're eating a ton of carbs and you're eating a lot of fat, you're kind of heading to probably not the best place unless you're incredibly physically active and you're burning it off and you're metabolically flexible so that your body can flip between burning fat for fuel and burning carbs for fuel. And that's the goal.
So why would restaurants choose seed oil over olive oil? Is it just
cheap.
A pricing
cheap,
thing?
Big time cheap. Yeah.
And in restaurants, they're reheating oils, right? So that's the other thing. I don't care what oil you take. If you heat it again and heat it some more and then heat it again, you're breaking bonds. You're turning it into something it was never meant to be. So if you have like an expeller press, cold pressed, really good quality sunflower oil that you're going to drizzle over a salad or something, which is not something that I do. I see no reason to use anything other than extra virgin olive oil on my salad. But let's say it's not going to be the end of the world, but there's no restaurant that's buying that.
Now, we have 4 olive trees, and I tried to watch some YouTube videos and tried. It is a hard process.
Oh, yeah.
And I got very, very little. So out of my 4 trees, they're younger-ish. They're not young, but they produce a lot. The amount that I collected, which was probably 1 to 2 strainers worth, like spaghetti pasta strainers worth.
You're kidding.
I got this much oil out of it.
Oh,
So it was a lot of work to do it. But
yeah, you're
I
better
wanted to
off
try
pickling
it.
the olives.
I wanted to try it. I'm like, it looks pretty easy online, but it's a really hard process
Eat the
to
olives.
do it. And or just buy olive oil.
I think we could probably talk about this for 3 or 4 more hours. But
Sorry.
I don't know. I looked down
No,
at the
no,
clock.
it's
I'm like, we
okay.
have 8 minutes before she has to wrap
we
it up
should
and
probably
get on a plane back to Canada. So she missed her flight tonight.
So, definitely tell people where to find you. And then I know she had the podcast on that we talked about was the top 10
Creatine,
the creatine and
and
then,
the GHK.
And the
So
GHK.
what is the name of your
Okay.
podcast if people wanted to search you
Oh,
out directly?
it's Longevity with Nathalie.
okay. And spell your name.
Oh, that's Natalie with an H, because French people don't know what to do with H's. So we use them for decorative purposes. We just throw them in places.
I know. I told her I actually know somebody that pronounced it Nathalie,
Which
but
is
hers is just
fascinating to me.
Natalie. Fascinating. So fascinating.
Anyway, Nathalie and Niddam.
Okay, perfect. And we'll link everything on for your socials. I know I feel like you're more active on Facebook than.
No, I'm actually more active on Instagram.
Okay, but Facebook's kind of where you started, and then you moved over
Yeah.
a little bit too, but probably sharing similar stuff across both
Oh,
platforms.
sure.
So you have the podcast, maybe one day a book, I hear.
Yeah, there might be a book brewing. And I also have a membership community, which is off Facebook, because
Where you can give more information.
we can share more information and do fun stuff. And I have a GLP-1 group in there, and I've got a bioregulator group in this. So we do all kinds of different.
Well, I've learned a lot today. I don't know how Candace or Sean found you, probably through social media. So we do appreciate you being here. I know you came from Florida, going to Canada. It was a lot of trek to get here. So I think it was very knowledgeable. And like Sean said, we'll probably end up having you back because we have to pick your brain some more.
Well, thank you for
we'll have
having
to do
me.
it again. No, I follow her. That's how I found her.
He found me. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has
Yeah.
been a pleasure meeting
Awesome.
you both. Thank you.
Thank you.